My brothers and sisters, listen. God never intended for his people to struggle financially. Poverty is not piety. Being broke is not being holy. You can't feed the hungry, clothe the naked, or build the kingdom if you're struggling to keep your lights on. If you're not making money, it's not because God is holding out on you. It's because you haven't yet understood how he blesses. And the first thing you've got to understand is this. Wealth is created through work, not wish. This isn't about grinding mindlessly or hustling without purpose. It's about realizing that God's method of blessing you is through your willingness to engage with the work he sets before you. Let's go back to the beginning. When God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden, he didn't say, Adam, sit down and relax. I prepared a buffet for you. No, he said, dress it and keep it. Work it, maintain it, develop it. God gave Adam potential, not a finished product. Most people pray for harvest, but they haven't planted a seed. They're asking for increase, but they haven't invested any effort. You can't expect God to bless what you haven't started. God blesses motion. God blesses momentum. When you move in faith, when you start building, selling, creating, organizing, whatever your hands find to do, he steps in with his supernatural favor to multiply it. You remember the widow in 2 Kings 4? She was broke, in debt, and her sons were about to be taken as slaves. She cried up to the prophet Elisha, and what did he say? What do you have in your house? In other words, God starts with what you already have. She said, just a little jar of oil. And Elisha didn't tell her to sit back and watch it multiply. He told her to gather vessels, borrow not a few, and pour. That's work. She had to take action. She had to involve her body in the process of her blessing. This is where many believers get stuck. They confuse faith with inactivity. They think trusting God means waiting for a miracle. But miracles are often the result of obedient action. In fact, the miracle doesn't show up until you start moving. Peter didn't walk on water by sitting in the boat and praying for strong legs. He had to step out. He had to move before the evidence appeared. That's the kind of faith that makes money God's way. The faith that acts, that understands that heaven doesn't reward laziness. See, there's a deception in the world today that says you can manifest wealth by thinking about it. Vision boards, affirmations, dreaming. And while there's power in seeing and speaking your goals, without work, they're just empty wishes. The Bible says in all labor there is profit, not in all hoping, not in all daydreaming, in labor. That means your bank account is tied directly to the value you produce, not just the prayers you pray. Don't misunderstand me. Prayer is essential. Prayer sets your spirit in alignment with God, but money shows up after the prayer through the plan and because of the work. Let me make it real for you. When you go out and serve, solve problems, create value, and provide solutions to people, that's when the income begins to reflect your impact. If you're broke, it doesn't mean you're cursed. It means you need to increase your contribution. You need to ask yourself, what am I offering that someone else needs? The marketplace is an exchange of value. You want kingdom wealth? Then you need a kingdom offer. Something that blesses others, makes their lives easier, better, fuller. And that offer must be delivered with diligence. Now let's talk about laziness for a minute. Proverbs says the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the soul of the diligent is made fat. That means the lazy person wants dreams and desires, but ends up with empty hands. Why? Because desire without discipline is delusion. You can't expect kingdom results with worldly habits. You can't expect to prosper while you procrastinate. God is not going to override your laziness with his blessings. He's not going to do for you what he's already given you the ability and power to do. God gave you hands, use them. God gave you a mind, think. God gave you a voice, speak. God gave you skills, develop them. The word says he gives you power to get wealth, not wealth itself, but the power, the capacity, the tools. That means if you're waiting on a check from heaven, you're going to miss the assignment he's placed in your lap. He's not sending cash. He's sending instructions. He's sending ideas. He's sending relationships, opportunities, challenges, and yes, work. That job you think is beneath you, that could be the training ground for your business, that project you've been putting off. That might be the seed that triggers your breakthrough. The principle is clear. Do not despise small beginnings. Just because it starts small doesn't mean it ends small. Every oak tree starts as an acorn. And this is what separates kingdom-minded wealth builders from everyone else. We understand that the grind isn't the goal. The work isn't the destination. It's the pathway. When you commit to showing up every day, applying your gifts, sharpening your skills, offering your service, and trusting God with the results, that's when divine multiplication kicks in. That's when God begins to breathe on your efforts and do exceedingly abundantly above all that you ask or imagine. But he won't bless a parked car. Movement is the catalyst for momentum. Money follows mission. That's not just a catchy phrase. It's a spiritual law. In the kingdom of God, prosperity is always attached to purpose. If you're chasing money without a sense of divine assignment, you're operating in hustle, not harvest. God is not obligated to finance your ego or your ambition. He funds his vision, not your version. And the truth is, until you discover your purpose, you will always struggle with provision. That's because purpose is the magnet that attracts supernatural resources. When you step into alignment with the reason God created you, money begins to flow towards you, not away from you. People often ask, why isn't my business growing? Or myself. Or why does it feel like I'm grinding and not gaining? And more often than not, the answer is simple. You're building something God never told you to build. It might be a good idea, but it's not a God idea. The Tower of Babel was man's idea, and it got shut down. Noah's Ark was God's idea, and it saved a generation. The difference, one was rooted in pride, the other in purpose. One was built to make a name for man. The other was built in obedience to God's instruction. Purpose determines whether your project is protected by heaven or exposed to collapse. When you know your purpose, you stop chasing every opportunity. You become laser focused. You understand that success isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right thing. But in fact, purpose acts like a filter. It helps you discern what to say yes to and what to walk away from. And that clarity creates momentum. Confused people don't prosper. Unfocused people don't multiply. But when you're locked in on your assignment, you begin to tap into divine acceleration. Doors open, people show up, resources appear. Why? Because heaven invests in alignment. Let's get real about this. Money is a servant, not a master. It was never meant to be chased. It was meant to be commanded by someone walking in authority. And authority only comes from assignment. When you're in your purpose, you walk in spiritual authority because you're backed by the one who sent you. Just like a police officer doesn't have power in himself, but stands in the authority of the badge, you don't need to make things happen in your own strength. Purpose gives you access to power. When you move on God's instruction, the weight of the kingdom backs you up. Look at Jesus. He wasn't wealthy in the traditional sense, but he never lacked anything. Why? Because he was always on assignment. He needed a donkey. It was there. He needed a room for the Last Supper. It was provided. He needed provision for his ministry, and women of wealth supported him. That's what happens when you walk in your calling. Supply follows vision. It doesn't precede it. Too many people are waiting for the money before they start the mission. But God says, start moving and the money will meet you on the journey. The widow of Zarephath had one meal left. She told the prophet Elijah, I'm about to prepare it for me and my son that we may eat it and die. And what did the man of God say? Make me a cake first. That sounds harsh until you understand purpose. Elijah wasn't being selfish. He was positioning her for supernatural provision. Her purpose in that moment was to sustain the prophet. And because she stepped into that role, her flour and oil never ran out. When you prioritize your assignment, you activate the flow of abundance. It may not make logical sense, but God's economy operates on obedience, not opinion. Purpose is also the answer to burnout. People think they're tired because they're doing too much. But the truth is, they're doing the wrong things. Nothing drains you faster than building something you weren't called to build. But when you're in purpose, even long hours feel light. There's a supernatural energy that comes from alignment. You wake up with passion. You go to bed fulfilled. You don't dread Monday. Why? Because you know you're walking in what God created you for. Let's talk business for a moment. If you're an entrepreneur, your purpose should be at the core of your offer. You're not just selling a product. You're solving a problem that aligns with your God-given calling. And the more clearly your business reflects your assignment, the more magnetic it becomes. Customers can feel the difference between someone who's in it for the check and someone who's in it to change lives. And here's the secret. The one who's focused on changing lives will make more money than the one who's chasing checks. Why? Because transformation is more valuable than transaction. and people will pay gladly for solutions that carry purpose. Your purpose isn't just for Sundays, it's for the marketplace. It's for the boardroom, the stage, the classroom, the sales call, the strategy session. Wherever you show up, you should carry the weight of your assignment. That's what sets you apart. That's what makes you a light in dark places. You weren't put here to blend in. You were put here to stand out, to make impact, and to bring kingdom principles into the places that need them most. Purpose gives you identity. It gives you direction, and it gives you provision. When you find your purpose, you don't need to fake it, force it, or fear it. You just walk in it because you understand that everything you need is already assigned to your assignment. The people, the platforms, the partners, they're all waiting on you to step into your lane. Not hustle harder, just obey quicker. And as you do, you'll discover that money is no longer elusive. It's a byproduct of mission. It's the fruit of following the voice of God in your life. The size of the problem you solve determines the size of the reward you receive. That's a kingdom law, a marketplace law, and a spiritual truth. God didn't create you to exist without impact. He wired you to be a solution in motion. Too many people are praying for financial breakthrough while avoiding responsibility. They're asking for overflow without offering value. But God's system is one of exchange. The world doesn't pay you for what you know. It pays you for what you can fix. When you begin to solve bigger problems, you unlock bigger provision. That's not greed. That's design. Proverbs says, a man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. But a gift that's unused is worthless. A gift that's buried never blesses anybody. And here's the key. Your gift is not for your entertainment. It's for someone else's elevation. That means your gift becomes a stream of income when you package it to solve problems for others. Think about Joseph. He had a gift of interpreting dreams. That gift didn't just make him popular. It made him powerful. It got him out of prison and placed him in a palace. But the turning point wasn't just having the gift. It was using it to solve Pharaoh's problem. He interpreted a dream, created an economic plan, and saved a nation from famine. That's divine problem solving, and it came with divine compensation. Now, if you're only solving small problems, don't be surprised when small money follows. God rewards scale. If your solution only helps a handful of people, you'll get a handful of results. But if you think, build, and act on a larger level, heaven responds. You've got to ask yourself, what is the pain I am called to eliminate? Your prosperity is directly connected to your ability to relieve pressure in someone else's life. The greater the pain, the greater the pay. The greater the responsibility you take on, the greater the reward attached to it. In business, that's called value. The marketplace is always willing to exchange money for value, but value is subjective. It's based on perception and urgency. So if you want to increase your income, increase your impact. Start solving problems that people care about. Start becoming the answer to questions people are desperately asking. Don't just be present, be purposeful. When people think of your name, they should immediately associate it with a specific transformation, not general help, specific results. Jesus was the ultimate problem solver. He healed the sick, raised the dead, opened blind eyes, fed the multitudes, taught with authority, forgave sin, and gave hope. He didn't wait for people to come up with solutions. He walked in authority and solved whatever was in front of him. And people followed him because he brought results. That's why crowds gathered. That's why his name spread. He didn't promote himself. His impact did that for him. When you move with solution-based intention, your results will market you better than any ad ever could. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to get paid for their presence instead of their performance. People are not going to keep paying you because you show up. They pay because you show up and make something better. That's why low-income earners often complain about being underappreciated. They believe effort is enough. But effort without effectiveness doesn't create economic movement. You can work hard and still struggle if you're not solving meaningful problems. Hard work is honorable, but in the kingdom, it's not just about how hard you work, it's about how effectively you serve. Let's take it deeper. Some people have buried their gift under excuses. They think, I'm not good enough, or someone else already does this, or I need more time to be perfect. Meanwhile, the world is waiting for someone with the courage to show up with answers. God doesn't use perfect people. He uses prepared people, people who are willing to release what they've been given. The boy with the 5 loaves and 2 fish didn't wait until he had enough to feed the crowd. He just brought what he had and let Jesus multiply it. If you bring your solution to the table, God will breathe on it, but he can't multiply what you don't offer. This principle works in every area. If you're an entrepreneur, solve a problem in your niche better than anyone else. If you're in ministry, bring answers to the spiritual and practical needs of your community. If you're an employee, solve problems so well that your employer can't imagine operating without you. Problem solvers are not optional. They're essential. And because they're essential, they're rewarded. Look at Daniel. He didn't get promoted just because he prayed. He got promoted because he interpreted dreams and advised kings. Prayer positioned him, but problem solving promoted him. Now you may say, but I don't know what problem I'm supposed to solve. Start by looking at what burdens you, what frustrates you. What pain do you constantly notice in others? What patterns keep showing up around you? Often the problem you are most anointed to solve is the one that annoys you the most. That's not a coincidence. That's a calling. Your sensitivity is a sign of your assignment. And when you lean into it, study it, refine your approach, and deliver results consistently, money will have no choice but to follow. Solving problems also requires positioning. If people can't find you, they can't pay you. Your gift must be visible. Your offer must be clear. Your transformation must be tangible. Don't assume that just because you're talented, people will show up. Excellence that's hidden is excellence that's unrewarded. You need to be strategic. Be where your audience is. Speak their language. Show them you understand their pain better than they do, and then prove you have the solution. When your offer becomes the bridge between someone's pain and their breakthrough, that's when you step into kingdom prosperity. The money you want is hidden in the people you're called to serve. You don't need to chase money when you understand that wealth is released through service. The question is not, how can I make more money? The real question is, who am I called to serve and how can I serve them better? When you shift your focus from income to impact, your income begins to increase automatically. That's a kingdom principle. Jesus said, the greatest among you shall be your servant. That wasn't just about humility. It was a blueprint for influence, and influence attracts income. Too many people are trying to elevate themselves without adding value to anyone else. They want wealth, but they don't want to wash feet. They want profit, but they're not willing to serve. But in the kingdom, money flows through relationships. You can't prosper in isolation. The gift God placed inside you was never meant to bless you. It was meant to bless others through you. And when others are blessed, provision comes back in return. Give, and it shall be given unto you. That doesn't just apply to church offerings. It applies to business, leadership, ministry, and life. You give value, and value comes back multiplied. Think of service as the seed that unlocks the harvest. If you don't serve, you can't reap. The world is looking for solutions, not just slogans. People are looking for someone who actually cares about their struggle, their pain, their goals, their family, their dreams. When you show up with genuine service in your heart, not just the desire to get paid, you build trust. And trust is the currency that creates transactions. The level of service you give determines the level of income you receive. That's not theory, that's truth. Let's take a look at the parable of the Good Samaritan. The priest passed by, the Levite passed by, but the Samaritan stopped. He noticed the need. He met the need, and he paid the price to make sure the wounded man was taken care of. The point of that parable is deeper than kindness. It's a kingdom lesson on the posture of service. You have to see people, not just see opportunity. You have to be moved with compassion, not just driven by commission. When you truly serve, heaven takes notice and heaven funds it. There's a principle I call value perception alignment. People don't just pay for your service, they pay based on the level of value they perceive from that service. That means it's not enough to just be good. You must be intentional in how you deliver, communicate, and position your value. If people don't see the transformation you bring, they'll undervalue you. But when you package your service in a way that elevates their perception of its impact, they're willing to pay premium prices. This is not about manipulation. It's about clarity. It's about showing people the true worth of the solution you carry. And here's what's powerful. The more people you serve, the more income you generate. It's simple math. If you solve a $1,000 0 cents problem for 10 people, you've made $10 0 cents. But if you solve a $1 0 cents problem for 10 people, now you've made $1 million 0 cents. The difference isn't in the complexity of your service. It's in the scale of your service. You don't always need a new offer. You need to expand your reach, and you do that by refining your message, sharpening your skills, and increasing your visibility. Service that is scalable is service that is profitable. Now, don't confuse servanthood with slavery. Serving people doesn't mean letting people abuse your boundaries. It doesn't mean undercharging or over-delivering to the point of burnout. Biblical servanthood is rooted in strength, not weakness. Jesus washed feet, but he also flipped tables. He served with power, not with passivity. Your service should come from a place of overflow, not obligation. When you serve from overflow, you're not depleted, you're invigorated, and that kind of energy is magnetic. People are drawn to the light of someone who loves what they do and does it with excellence. Excellence in service is also a reflection of kingdom citizenship. You represent a God who does all things well. So when you serve, you're not just representing yourself, you're representing the king. Sloppy service is a poor witness, but when you serve with excellence, when you pay attention to detail, when you deliver more than expected, you create an experience people don't forget. An unforgettable service creates loyal clients, referrals, and a reputation that prints money. You've also got to understand that different levels of service require different levels of self-development. You can't serve kings with a common mindset. You can't reach million-dollar clients with $5 habits. If you want to serve on a high level, read more, pray deeper, study your craft, surround yourself with excellence, invest in your personal development. Why? Because you can only serve others to the level you've built yourself. If you're stagnant, your service will be too. But when you grow, your capacity to serve grows, and so does your income. Some people think serving others means giving everything away for free. But service and charity are not the same thing. Even Jesus received support from those he served. The women who followed him gave financially to sustain his ministry. That means when people are transformed by your service, many of them will want to sow back into you. And when they do, it's not just business, it's divine reciprocity. You gave, they received, now they give back. That's how God designed it to work. The laborer is worthy of his wages, and if your labor is impacting lives, don't be afraid to receive the reward that comes with it. If you want to prosper God's way, you must become obsessed with serving better. You must look at the people you're called to help and ask, how can I solve their problems faster, simpler, and more powerfully? Don't just meet expectations, exceed them. Don't just deliver results, create transformations. Because when your service changes lives, those lives will change your income. And when your heart is set on helping others win, God will make sure you don't lose. That's the economy of the kingdom. Service leads to success. Impact attracts increase. When you serve like it's your assignment, you position yourself for supernatural provision. Money responds to order. That's why you can pray all you want, fast all you want, shout, dance, speak in tongues, and still be broke if your financial house is out of order. God is not obligated to bless chaos. He blesses stewardship. He blesses systems. He blesses structure. The kingdom operates on divine order, and when you align your finances with God's principles, you create a container for overflow without order. Increase becomes a curse instead of a blessing. When your house is out of order, more money just multiplies the dysfunction. But when your house is in order, more money multiplies your effectiveness. You don't need more money to get your life together. You need to get your life together so God can trust you with more money. He doesn't give seed to squanderers. He gives seed to sowers. So the first thing you have to do is take inventory. Where is the disorder in your finances? Are you budgeting or just spending? Are you investing or just consuming? Are you stewarding your income or leaking it through mismanagement? You can't fix what you won't face, and you can't multiply what you haven't mastered. God is not going to violate his own order to bless your disorder. Look at the feeding of the 5,000. Jesus didn't multiply the loaves and fish while they were scattered all over the hillside. He told the disciples to have the people sit down in groups. He brought order first. Then he lifted the food to heaven, blessed it, and multiplied it. The miracle didn't come until there was structure. Because if God multiplies something you're not prepared to handle, you'll waste the increase. The system has to be in place before the surplus can be sustained. That's why most people don't have a money problem. They have a structure problem. They're praying for God to do something miraculous while ignoring the mess in their finances. Some people are anointed but broke because they spiritualize dysfunction. They think being called excuses them from being organized, but disorganization delays destiny. You can't fulfill $1 million calling with 10-cent habits. If your money is messy, your mission will always feel like a struggle. And it's not the devil blocking you, it's your lack of stewardship. You don't need another miracle. You need a money management system. You need to know where every dollar's going and why it's going there. Because if you can't manage thousands, you won't manage millions. Stewardship qualifies you for increase. God told Adam to tend and keep the garden. That was before the fall. That means stewardship is not a result of the curse. It's a reflection of dominion. The ruling starts with responsibility. You want to walk in kingdom wealth, then you need to treat your finances like a garden. Cultivate it, protect it, multiply it, eliminate weeds, prune what's not producing. That's order. And order creates the environment for growth. There are people praying for new seasons, but refusing to clean up their current season. God doesn't operate on confusion. He operates on alignment. When you get your money aligned with his word, his spirit, and his strategy, supernatural provision becomes a byproduct of divine order. One of the first things you must establish is a vision for your money. Money without purpose has no direction. And if it has no direction, it will drift. That's why people who get sudden wealth often lose it just as fast. They had provision, but no vision. You need to know why you want more money, not just more stuff, but more purpose, more impact, more reach, more legacy. When your money has a mission, God will fund the mission. You need a financial plan that reflects your assignment, not your appetite. A lot of people confuse lifestyle with purpose, and they end up broke trying to look blessed. Then you need priorities. What comes first in your money flow? Is it tithing? Is it saving? Is it investing? Is it spending? Your habits reveal your hierarchy. If you spend before you give, you've already declared what's most important. Headlam order always begins with giving. Not because God needs your money, but because giving breaks the grip of greed and puts you in the flow of divine economy. When you honor God with the first, he blesses the rest. But when you rob God and then wonder why you're living under financial pressure, the answer is not mysterious. It's misaligned priorities. Bring order to your first fruits and you'll begin to see provision released in every other area. Now after priorities comes discipline. Consistency is the engine of wealth. Most people don't build wealth through windfalls. They build it through wise decisions repeated over time. That requires systems. That requires self-control. That requires saying no to instant gratification so you can say yes to generational impact. Discipline isn't sexy, but it's effective. Budgeting isn't fun, but it's freedom. Wealthy people don't guess, they plan. They don't just pray, they prepare. Discipline is not about deprivation. It's about direction. When you direct your dollars with diligence, you position yourself for multiplication.